So you're asking about the relevance of humanistic studies, in particular in my own case, a philosophical background for computer science. And there are different ways of answering that question, because it could be about why I think the practice of computer science research and also development in computing could be enhanced by certain kinds of humanistic understandings. The other way to ask it is whether computer scientists also need to be experts in the humanities and philosophy. And it may be that we have some computer scientists with that kind of background, but I think it's just more important to do the more realistic thing, which is to bring computer science in conversation with the humanities, and in particular ethical thinking around philosophical concepts. So I can speak from my own experience, which is there are two ways that I think my work has positive impact on computer science and computer scientists. One is that often computer science is reaching for a concept, and my most clear experience is with privacy, but actually even security, it is sometimes, I think it's really important for us to think philosophically about the concept of security, but step back for a moment and think about privacy. We have a lot of interest now in privacy by design and privacy engineering, but when you ask computer scientists what they mean by privacy, often what you get is a very foggy answer. And so the humanities and analytic philosophy in particular has spent centuries with these kinds of questions, looking at important concepts that are difficult and deep and fuzzy, and trying to clarify them so that we can work with them. So I think that one of the most important contributions is to take concepts and make them clear so that computer scientists, and I like to use the word operationalize, can then provide an operational definition of these concepts that can then be implemented in a system, so that the end result of the system is that it reflects the value, the true nature of the value, and not some strange thing that isn't the value. So that's one case. The other case is reasoning ethically. So it's to say, why is privacy important? If you are going to protect privacy in this way, should you leave certain roads in case there's a trade-off that's required? And what should those trade-offs look like? So it's the ethical reasoning to identify something as a value, to explain why it's important and what kinds of human behaviors are important because they promote that value and they don't interfere with that value. So that's a second way. It's rigorous, systematic, ethical thinking that has become important in computer science, because computer science has become a field that has very direct impact on society. In Europe, the intention is to have an overarching fundamental right to privacy that applies generally. And in the US, we've tended to take a sectoral approach where we've regulated sector by sector. So those are some of the key differences between the EU and the US approach. Each one of them has certain advantages and disadvantages. According to my own theory of privacy, the sectoral approach is a comfortable approach, but unfortunately in the US we have not provided very strong privacy protections, even sectorally. But in the EU there is a strong effort to regulate. However, some of the complaint about the EU approach is that you still haven't found the recipe for implementing and enforcing this approach across all the EU. So you're asking about science and academics having a responsibility to society, and I mean, one has to answer the question yes. But there are different ways in which you can make the contribution. So there are going to be the classic disciplines where you have highly theoretical, abstract thinking, and it could be mathematically, it could be literature, it could be history, and then you have a need for academics who are much more directly involved in society in taking some of these ideas over the centuries and applying them. And those folks make a different contribution. And we should be thinking in that way. You're asking about similarities between Cornell Tech and Leuphana, and as you know, Cornell Tech is a campus that's part of Cornell University that's placed in New York City. And it's part of an effort by the ex-mayor of New York City to create an innovation hub in New York City that could compete with Silicon Valley in California. And there are similarities because just as I understand Leuphana to be trying to orient a student's studies around very important problems in society rather than to take a straightforward traditional disciplinary approach to education. In the same way, Cornell Tech wants to educate students around work they will ultimately be performing in society. And so often they'll gather different groups together with different disciplinary backgrounds in a kind of problem solving or startup activities. So there are those kinds of similarities. A really important article in STS, in Science and Technology Studies, that sees technological development like a drama. There's one act and it does something, and then another one that counteracts that, and it's constant struggle. And we see technological development in that way. Eventually, a technology settles down. And when that happens, we lose sight of all the struggles that happened along the way. So if I look around, I see most people are carrying an Apple iPhone. And what we forget is the years of struggle between all the different devices that ultimately arrive at the iPhone. If you're a digital native, and this is really a metaphor for the larger picture, if you're a digital native, you don't understand maybe why we have the devices that we have. You don't even know that there was a struggle. And you often just think that the iPhone that you're carrying is the best possible outcome of these struggles because Apple won in that particular struggle. But you don't realize that sometimes better technology loses for political reasons. So I think that in a campus like Leuphana, where you have a combination of, say, people with STS backgrounds and the technologists who can teach the students, it seems to me a good idea for students who are open to it to understand that the technologies that are in their hands are the end result of this kind of social and political struggle. Because that way, if things go wrong, they can understand that there are alternatives, and that's really important.